Today we'll learn how to solve a few absolute value equations. As usual, let's start by reviewing some basic definitions. Let's together read the definition of absolute value of a number. Suppose x is a real number. Then absolute value of x is defined to be the distance of the number x from the point 0 on the number line. When we put vertical lines around x like this, we read it as absolute value of x. The vertical lines are not parentheses or brackets. The precise meaning of the vertical lines is given in the definition we just read. Let's examine the definition a little further. So here's the number line. A real number is a point on the number line. Let's look at the following list of real numbers on the number line. By the absolute value definition, we can now figure out the following. Absolute value of 7 is 7, since 7 is at a distance of 7 units from 0. Absolute value of negative 7 is also 7, since negative 7 is also at a distance of 7 units from 0. Absolute value of 0 is 0, since 0 is at a distance of 0 units from 0. Absolute value of negative pi is pi, since negative pi is at a distance of pi units from 0. From these easy calculations, you have surely observed that absolute value of any number can only be a non-negative number, since distances from 0 cannot be negative. We notice that non-negative numbers are at or to the right of 0, and then the absolute value of such a number is exactly the same as the number itself. In contrast, consider a negative number that is to the left of 0. The absolute value of a negative number is the opposite of that number, a positive quantity again. So, the definition may also be written as follows using mathematical notation. If x is greater than or equal to 0, then absolute value of x is same as x. If x is less than 0, then absolute value of x is negative x. Now let's draw some more observations to get comfortable with the definition of absolute value concept. Notice that 7 and negative 7 are the only two numbers whose absolute value is 7. Those are the only two real numbers on the number line whose distance from 0 is 7. This logic is true for other positive numbers. Notice 0 is the only number whose absolute value is 0. Finally, there are no real numbers whose absolute value is a negative number. This is a direct consequence of the definition of absolute value. Okay, now let's look at this question. Solve the equation absolute value of x equals 7. This is sometimes called an absolute value equation due to the presence of absolute values in the equation. Solving the equation means finding real number values which when substituted into the equation give us a true statement. To do these problems, we need to apply the definition we just learned. Absolute value of x is defined to be the distance of the number x from the point 0 on the number line. This equation says that distance must be 7. So the solutions to the equation are precisely the real numbers whose distance from 0 is 7. Just a few moments ago, we said that there are only two such numbers. Here's the visual model for this discussion where I have placed solid dots on the number line at the solutions. So, applying the definition of absolute value, we conclude that the solutions are negative 7 and 7. And we write a concluding sentence either like this or like this. Pick one of the concluding sentences you like and use it as the last line of your work on such solve the absolute value equation problems. Be sure to do the check work by putting each number you claim is the solution back into the equation and making sure each value indeed satisfies the equation. Here are 3 easy problems for you to try out first before I show you the answers. On each one, rather than rushing through and giving me the answer, pause and think about the definition of absolute value and note how it is the definition that allows us to arrive at the solutions. In math, it's not just the answer that's important. You need to know for yourself the clear logical reasoning behind your answer, and you also need to know how to communicate that logic in your write-up style. So get to work on these problems and in each case write a concluding statement. Here are the answers. Pause the video as needed to check your work. In the next videos, we'll work on absolute value equations such as these.